Well, welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and today we're going to be checking out upcoming merchandise for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then transitioning it into a discussion about legendary Pokemon inside of the games. So let's get into it because we have an interesting update. This figure was just announced, as well as these figures down here. So we are now seeing legendary Pokemon merchandise for Generation 8, and Corviknight is a really interesting one because it is the first Generation 8 Pokemon that is not a starter or a legendary that has been added to the Takara Monster Collection series. Now, something that makes this merchandise stuff a bit more interesting is how it's kind of correlating with the new Pokemon anime that we just got the reveal for the next season of the Pokemon anime, and now we're also getting a ton of product on top of that. So we have starter figures as well as plushes, and then this Battle Stadium, which is also really interesting because Scorbunny is the partner Pokemon of one of the new protagonists, Go. And then we have Ash and Pikachu, so that seems to be at least kind of calling towards the anime and the information that we just had revealed, and then we're also getting more gacha stuff. But another thing to consider is that since we're getting more product reveals for the starter Pokemon, it's October. Maybe we're also starting to build up into the evolutions as well. I don't think we're going to get a merchandise leak that's going to leak the evolutions before they get officially revealed or anything, but I think all the timings are lining up, and what's showing is, as we build up into the release of Pokemon Sword and Shield, we're getting a lot of information elsewhere. It's kind of piecing everything together, and we also have these figure storage cases. That's also right here. So, boom! We have the new storage cases, and it also shows some of the stuff. So we have Zeraora, we have Greninja, and it's kind of peculiar that they're being shown next to the Generation 8 Pokemon that we're getting. And then we have Garchomp here. So the question is, how much of this is just going to be for the fan service, for the merchandise? There's going to be a lot of hype behind Generation 8, and another thing to consider is that the anime is going to visit all the regions, and we see all of the legendaries and stuff like this. So if Pokemon Sword and Shield doesn't have all of the Pokemon, because the dex cut, that's an already confirmed thing, but if it also doesn't have all of the legendaries, then that's at least going to be filled in by the next Pokemon anime, so the products and all that merchandise still makes sense, especially with generational icons like Garchomp, like Greninja. Lucario's already confirmed for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and even when it comes to Zeraora, like, he was revealed late in Pokemon like Sun and Moon, late Generation 7, so still just like throwing out Zeraora figures. People are still rabid to buy them because there haven't been that many opportunities to have them. So a lot of this makes sense. And then Mew, Go's quest is capture every Pokemon, especially the mythical Pokemon, Mew, and then we have Meltan, Melmetal. So all this stuff makes sense. But then the starter Pokemon, that's interesting as well, because one of the biggest things about Pokemon Sword and Shield is waiting for the confirmation of more starter Pokemon. That Leon's signature Pokemon appears to be a Charizard, but what about the other starters? Does this mean just all the Kanto Pokemon? But if you put in just Kanto Pokemon, you're going to upset a lot of people when it comes to Dex Cut. But one way of making the Dex Cut not hurt as much for the people that are offended by it is that at least if you have all the starters, if every generation is represented in some way and you have a callback to your original Pokemon adventure by at least having the starter Pokemon, or if your favorites are the starter Pokemon, because there's a lot of people, like, those final evolutions are pretty awesome, and those are just very common favorite Pokemon ever material, so just kind of keeping that in is going to be a pretty big thing. So keeping an eye out for that on the merchandise is going to be significant as well, but Kanto Pokemon seems kind of like a given, and then we're waiting to see if they're going to kind of pick and choose generations for Pokemon Sword and Shield. And now we can talk about the legendary Pokemon, because I wanted to kind of build this up in a way that shows everything that's going on right now, because these figures might not just confirm outright that, oh man, we're getting all the legendaries inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield, but there is a lot of weird promotional material that's going on when it comes to figures. These are going to be Pokeball figures. And we have the starters, so that's cool. But then we have all of the legendary Pokemon and signature mythical Pokemon and crazy stuff like the final form for Necrozma going on with this. Arceus, Lugia, Rayquaza. Man, they really want to move that product, but are these Pokemon going to be inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield? I really feel like the anime is making this a trickier call, but also they're just legendary Pokemon. They're always in demand because of that power fantasy, and kids are going to get their favorite, most powerful Pokemon in a figurine. So it's not like this is directly tying in with Pokemon Sword and Shield before we've confirmed all the Pokemon in the National Dex or anything like that, but it does make a compelling case as for the Pokemon that could be introduced inside Pokemon Sword and Shield, since the marketing could be strategically done in this way to kind of coincide with the Dex cut. Now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to see how other Pokemon figures have gone. Like, do those Pokemon have to be available inside of a game for the figures to be released? Now, on the surface, it sounds like that's probably going to be a no, and history shows that is a no. So here we have the Legendary Bird Trio, we have Mewtwo, we have Mew, we have the starters for Generation 2, and then we have Lugia, Ho-Oh, and all kinds of other Pokemon. But look at these release dates. 2011. Now, 2011 was Pokemon Black and White 2 and Prime Generation 5. However, these Pokemon were not available in Generation 5, and Dream Radar ended up coming out the year after. So we have June 23rd, 2012. So it's not like Dream Radar came out and then to celebrate the arrival of all of these legendary Pokemon now obtainable inside of Generation 5, they started releasing figures. No, they just kind of keep cycling through the generations, through the different kinds of Pokemon. Like, they'll just do all the legendaries, then they'll do all the starters, then they'll kind of have generational order for random Pokemon figures to be released. So we have, like, Mr. Mime kind of just being splashed in here. Now, Mr. Mime getting material isn't the most unheard of thing, because even when Detective Pikachu came out, there was like a Pokemon Center promotion of just Mr. Mime merchandise and apparel. So it looks like this could just be a case of the figures being figures and not necessarily, oh man, this shows that we're going to have legendary Pokemon, why are we cutting the decks, or anything like that. And notice how the legendary Pokemon, these are going to be for the ML, so the Monster Collection large, and then we have the Monster Collection small. It's mostly shown by the price, 450 yen, 1500 yen, figures, sizes, legendaries and stuff like that, so it all lines up and makes sense. However, there's also still a case that this could be the release setup for the large figures going into Pokemon Sword and Shield, because the main legendary Pokemon are available inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and honestly, I wouldn't be against that, because really when it comes to competitive balance, the biggest problems are going to be the trio legendaries, and not even most of them. Mostly just like Landorus, and then the Tapu's getting in the way. But then the other legendaries, they're just fine. I mean, Suicune can wall out and be annoying for the most part. There's just a few Pokemon that are major problems inside of the game. And when you're thinking about like Dex Cut, restricted Pokemon, legendaries, and stuff like that, you know, getting rid of all of them would just be a good thing for the competitive health of Pokemon Sword and Shield. However, these guys are already always restricted, so it does make the free battle spot a bit of a mess, but I mean, I'd be okay with this, because I'm not going to see this in my ranked play. None of this is going to interfere with competitive Pokemon matches, but it also adds content into Pokemon Sword and Shield, and it kind of sets up going into Pokemon Home and the future of what's going to happen with Generation 8, and then that means we could probably just get like the other legendary Pokemon inside of the Sinnoh region. So then Sinnoh could have some reverse world shenanigans going on. That's when like all the trios start getting bundled together. And I feel like this also deals with one of the biggest problems I have with all of the legendary Pokemon inside the game, and that's just obtaining them. That it takes so long to obtain the dozens of legendary Pokemon that are all just kind of crammed into a single feature inside the game. So it's either Ultra Warp Ride farming in Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, or if we go back to Pokemon Omega Ruby now Sapphire, you had to do all the Mirage spots and meet requirements, and it gets tiring after a point. So what I would like to see is that since this is a new generation, there's a Dex Cut, it's kind of also like another wall. Like we had the symbol system to determine which Pokemon would be legal in certain battle conditions and stuff like that. So that line is going to be drawn, and these Pokemon do have to be made available for the Nintendo Switch, because bringing them over from Pokemon Bank just isn't going to cut it. And I think just having all of the big forbidden legendaries or the restricted legendaries in one game, and then having all the trio playable legendaries in another game, that seems like a really good way of doing it. I'd be okay if I could hit up all these legendaries inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then wait for the other trios and some of the other, like, Pokemon, you know, Tapus, those are technically like quads, so whatever. But when these Pokemon becoming available inside of Sinnoh through its extra gameplay, that just adds more features into each of the games separately, and then also kind of paces out the competitive balance and still stays true to what Game Freak is going for with the National Dex Cut. That, once again, I don't know how many times I have to repeat myself, it's not about graphics. It's not about animations. The biggest reason for the National Dex Cut is competitive balance and game feel. There are too many Pokemon to cram inside of a game and make the game work. I 100% agree with Game Freak's decision on this. And also, competitive balance, it's a lot easier to balance a few hundred Pokemon instead of 1,000 Pokemon. So with that, the National Dex cut needed to happen at some point. Game Freak said they wanted to do it in Generation 7. It has nothing to do with the quality of the games themselves. If Pokemon Sword and Shield is delayed for a year, you will still never see all of the Pokemon inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield. So I feel like this is the best way of handling it. If they are introducing legendaries, I wouldn't be against it. Now, one thing I did want to do to kind of also tie in all of the things, the anime, the history, the figures, the legendaries, is look at the Wayback Machine. So this is the same webpage, but for Generation 7 in 2018. And 2018, that's Pokemon Let's Go. So we're seeing mixed distribution between like Kanto and also just Alola stuff. And then as we got later into it, if you guys were keeping along with, 2017, the Dusk Lycanroc reveal, all those merchandise leaks and stuff like that, this is kind of where that's falling in line. But also, legendary Pokemon became available most likely because of the Ultra Warp Ride. So we are seeing some overlap. We have Articuno, Moltres, Zapdos. They're being revealed, or they had merchandise for the 7th generation. We're not seeing any merchandise now for Pokemon Sword and Shield so far. And then we have some main legendaries, Kyogre, Rayquaza, Groudon. They're already getting figures, Lugia, Ho-Oh, Dialga, Palkia. So, I mean, seeing even Dialga, Palkia here, it's going to be for December. So it's still coming soon, but it's not like we're waiting until 2020 for potential Diamond Pearl remakes for these Pokemon, which could suggest they might be available or they might not be. Like I said, like we're in this weird situation. Could be an anime tie-in because it's just going to be all generations, all regions, so there's really no limits when it comes to merchandise, even with the limitations of the Dex cut inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield. And as I've shown with like the other history, we kind of have things happening all over the place. This happened for Pokemon Let's Go because Kanto Megas were inside the game, pretty big deal, as well as EV promotion, evolutions, and stuff like that. So yeah, honestly, I don't think if the legendaries end up making it in, that's anything to go crazy about. This could hint towards that. And now we just have to wait and see what other reveals we get for Pokemon Sword and Shield. So guys, enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.